name is Amanda, superintendent here in Nelson County. And today what we wanted to be able to do is present some really important information in regards to tobacco use, vapes, and all things that we're starting to see an uptick in our schools, as well as we also are aware that a lot of this is taking place in surrounding school divisions. What we wanted to do is be able to provide some information to our families, our parents, and all interested parties to be able to give a little bit of knowledge about what we're seeing, because a lot of these items look drastically different than they did when we were going through high school and even college at times. So without further ado, I'd like to be able to introduce Mr. Kennedy, who's going to be leading the discussion today, and I will pass the mic over to him so he can take over.
Hey, thank you. All right, thank you for the introduction. Thank you all for having me tonight. For the people that are here, the people in the live stream, the people that are recording. Like I said, this parents are watching things very, very quickly. There's some significant dangers, some significant concerns. So this is a really important subject, and one that we hope to educate, inform, and have a good conversation on. There will be time for question and answers from people on the stream and from people here that we can get to at the end of the presentation. My name is Mr. Kennedy. I'm a prevention specialist with Region 10. I did have a partner that usually does this, but she was not here to join us tonight, so it's just going to be me. And our topics of discussion tonight are going to be, you're going to hear this phrase a couple times, INS, which is an acronym for Electronic Nicotine Delivery System. It's kind of the long form for vape. We'll have a show and tell of some products. I brought some tonight. What they look like on the different forms they come in, what those mean and what to look for. We'll have a discussion on other tobacco products that are still a challenge, and why we're so worried about it. What challenges is it facing and why is it causing so much concern? I'll talk about some of the recent legislations. We've also got a toolkit that we provide. We'll have a way for you all to access it that can teach you how to have conversations, different resources, different access to things. So the purpose of this is just to increase our knowledge of it, especially in a school environment. I imagine it's something that people are supposed to much more commonly than you want to, whether it's with students in school or children outside in different programs. It certainly is finding its ways in many areas. So we want to give you as much knowledge as possible. We'll talk about the effect on the developing brain. They say that the brain is not fully developed until about 25 or 26, and while nicotine, vaping, and stuff like that isn't. We see so much about fentanyl overdoses or the rise of methamphetamine or opioid addictions. It's not the immediate killer that is, but what is it doing to the brain, and what is that looking like long term? What are those impacts? So I'll have a discussion on that. We'll identify resources for further learning and support. And the main thing is just to gain confidence. One of the most impressive things about kids, middle schoolers, high schoolers, how informed, how smart, how ahead of the game they are with a lot of this, and to be able to speak confidently to them. To give that credibility during those conversations. So just to kind of set the background, the environment nationally, there's been lots of statements, lots of reports that the government is now seeing, the FDA, of how big this is. They call it an epidemic of youth e-cigarette use. But it's increased to epidemic proportions. Again, the FDA calling it an epidemic, the Surgeon General releasing an advisory on it. It's growing to such a significant concern that's attracted the attention of the federal government. And one of the things that's kind of challenging about this is how recent it is. There's lots of different drug trends, different substance use trends that come and go, rise and fall. But in terms of new delivery systems, there's really not anything that enters the game. Different substances might change, but the vaping concept, that electronic aspect of it is really new. The first e-cigarette was developed 20 years ago in China, and really started to then hit the market in America in the later years. In 2008, the World Health Organization proclaimed it was not a legitimate smoking cessation. A lot of people have been doing this to quit smoking. While there may be some anecdotal or individual people that it's worked for, officially it's not considered that. We've seen different other developments happen. FDA doing significant regulation, now to the point that manufacturers have to submit applications to evaluate the public benefit and harms. So there may be some significant restrictions coming in the future. What are these products? Again, anytime there's a battery-operated device that allows product to be inhaled, usually through an aerosol. A lot of people think it's just water, harmless. I'm just putting water into my lungs, and that's not the case. It is an aerosol. It contains nicotine flavoring and different other chemicals. And these chemicals can be very concerning. They can be metals, such as nickel and lead, they can be carcinogens. Flavoring can have also different aspects to it that aren't just giving it a taste or a flavor. There's one that's called diacetyl that's a big part of the flavoring that can lead to serious lung disease. There's particles, there's volatile organic compounds, and there's the substance nicotine. I'm going to turn on a video, which we'll talk about what's called Juul products. These were probably the first big wave of vapes and ends products that became popular in our youth about a decade ago. While there have been restrictions to different flavors, this is just to show how this got popular with young teens, how they use social media, how they use marketing, how they use celebrities to grab that demographic. So I'm going to turn on this video.
This is an ad for one of today's hottest products. If you don't look carefully, though, you might miss what it's advertising. It's the little thing, and it's called, oh no, it looks more like a flash drive or a computer device, but it is really another kind of e-cigarette. Since it launched in 2015, Juul has taken over about 70% of the e-cigarette retail market share. It's now worth about $16 billion, and that success is often attributed to its sleek design. But the same features that make Juul a well-engineered product also make it attractive to young people, many of whom have never smoked before. And that has people worried, because devices like Juul might be designed to help smokers get off cigarettes, but they're also addicting a new generation to nicotine. So what makes this one e-cigarette so different from the rest? Answering that question starts with what you see on the outside. Juul is an e-cigarette, but it really doesn't look like one. It looks like a tech product, and it's tiny. That allows smokers to get a nicotine fix without having to worry about social stigma, but also allows young users to consume nicotine inconspicuously without having to worry about who sees them.
Going to school, having this in your pocket is a lot better than having like something this big that looks kind of like a lightsaber. You know, you could kind of Juul anywhere in discreetness.
Discreetness is a big shift for e-cigarettes. Since the first patent in 1930, designs haven't been very subtle. The first generation of e-cigarettes mimicked the shape, size, and colors of traditional cigarettes, sometimes even with a fake light-up tip. The second and third generations focused on larger and more customizable devices with longer battery life and big plumes of vapor. Then came the Juul, a stripped-down version with no buttons, no big plumes of vapor, and no complex refilling or recharging. And it comes in a variety of bright colors that set it apart from other e-cigarettes, which made it look like a tech product that young people were already familiar with. That is why people call Juul the iPhone of e-cigs. And that similarity makes sense. Juul's founders met at Stanford Design School, and one worked as a design engineer at Apple. They created the first e-cigarette that looked more like a cool gadget and less like a drug delivery device. This wasn't smoking or vaping. It was juuling.
Yeah, like I've on iPhones now, it's kind of like normal kids have Juuls now. Because it looks so modern, we kind of trust modern stuff a little bit more, so we're like, we can use it. We're not going to have any trouble with it, because you can trust it.
The tech aspect of it helps people get introduced to it, and then once they're introduced to it, they're staying, because they're conditioned to like most different products, and then this is another product, and it's just another product until you're addicted to nicotine.
And that is where it gets tricky. A 2017 study found that 25% of 15 to 24-year-olds recognized the Juul in a photo, but the majority of them didn't know that it always contains nicotine. It's easy to trace that information gap. Just have to look at the ads. When you look at Juul's marketing today, you find video testimonials from adult ex-smokers.
My name is Lauren.
My name is Brandon.
My name is Carolyn. My name is Amon.
But when Juul first launched, their marketing looked a lot different. When you put those ads alongside old cigarette ads, the similarities are pretty striking. Both marketed relaxation, sharing, travel, freedom, and sex appeal. It's now illegal for cigarette brands to use these kinds of suggestive advertising themes. But for e-cigarette manufacturers who had products on the market before 2016, those strategies are still unregulated. That's why brands like Candy Pens can be promoted in e-cigarette music videos, just like tobacco corporations used to pay stars to smoke their cigarettes on screen. But compared to cigarettes, Juuls were a lot easier to start using. The typical e-cigarettes have between 6 and 30 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter of vape liquid. One Juul pod packs in 59 milligrams. That's 3 times the nicotine levels permitted in the European Union, which is why Juul isn't sold there. But here in the US, e-cigarettes don't have the same restrictions, even though we know that nicotine dependency can prime developing brains for future substance abuse disorders. The company says that Juul's nicotine content is about as much as a pack of cigarettes, though tobacco experts say it's likely more than that. And Juuls have a patented system for delivering that nicotine. Most e-cigarettes use a potent version of nicotine called freebase that gives users a strong hit. But Juuls vaporize a liquid made from nicotine salts. Those salts allow nicotine to be absorbed into the body at about the same speed as regular cigarettes, much faster than most e-cigarettes. But unlike freebase nicotine, which can be irritating, nicotine salt goes down smoothly. So Juul packs a bigger nicotine dose into a much more pleasant hit than most devices on the market. And that has public health officials worried, because the US almost beat nicotine addiction among kids.
Is cigarette smoking among those under 18? The use of other nicotine products, and especially e-cigarettes, has taken a drastic leap.
In April, the FDA demanded that Juul submit documents on its marketing and research. A group of senators sent a letter asking Juul to stop using flavors and designs that appeal to children. And there are now 3 lawsuits alleging that Juul contains too much nicotine. In response to the concerns, the makers of Juul have pledged $30 million to combat underage use. Merchandise and marketing materials now have big warning labels on them, and the company is developing lower nicotine pods. The trouble is, there's still a lot we don't know about the long-term e-cigarettes. Juul, like other e-cigarettes, might have set out to design a solution to a public health problem, but in a lot of ways, their product has created a new one.
So as we can see from that video, we almost kind of had the problem. Cigarettes were on their way out, cigars were on their way out. Then the people that saw they could make money off a dying market realized we can make this tech savvy, we can make this stylish, we can make this free. We'll be able to re-enter that market, get people to buy this again, and it worked. And so, unfortunately, the progress that we made nicotine-wise, tobacco-wise, got completely reversed. So again, look at the timeline here. It started out with stuff that looked like cigarettes, and by the end of this, the far right, they look nothing like cigarettes. As the product has evolved, the data has evolved, the features of it have changed. So now, these vapes come basically anything. I've got some products here I'll show in a sec. I can actually do that now, but they look like a simple bottle of shampoo or a bottle of perfume. It's got here. It could look like a tin or something to apply makeup. It's got a flash drive. It can be small, it can be large. With these, there's so many shapes and designs that it's not looking for one thing, and that huge dilution of it almost makes it hard to even know what you're looking for at all. If it was simply just looking for a cigarette-shaped object, it would be much easier. But when you're looking for things that you don't even know that smoke or vape products can come out of them, it's a much different game. So again, the first generation was very basic, kind of prototypes, looked like cigarettes, before they realized that maybe we should change that up. So those aren't marketable since those aren't popular. The second generation was the vape pens. And one of the things about this was this also introduced other products to be able to be inhaled and used through this, such as marijuana, hash, THC products. Third generation, we started to see mods. People were starting to then use it on social media, doing cloud tricks or making big smoke. This is when it started to become viral and become very popular. And now in this fourth generation, it's more about efficiency, about discreetness, not having huge things to smoke, being able to do it anywhere, while also having an increased level of nicotine to have that concentration even higher. Again, this is some other reflections of what they look like, such a diverse range of what they can be. And these things can be, I've had people tell me they found it plugged into their PlayStation. And they've had it where it completely like camouflaged into their belt. All things designed to make it accessible, to make it discreet, to make it confidential. So the thing that's in these is the liquid, and is the e-juice, the vape juice, provides that flavoring. And it's almost always going to contain nicotine. One of the dangerous things about this is the chemicals it contains, not just the addictive nicotine, but stuff like propylene, glycol, glycerin, other dangerous things to your body that doesn't need to be exposed to either short term or long term. The flavoring is a big deal because it's not simply just tobacco or burnt leaves. It's strawberry bubblegum or blue raspberry, or all kinds of crazy different flavors. As of 2018, which was now 5 years ago, so I imagine this number has only gotten dramatically higher. There was over 15,000 different flavors on the market. All things that someone can find one that they like. Out of 15,000, someone's got a flavor of some sort that they would find enjoyable, and that's the whole point of it. Is to say, we reach everyone here. There's not a single person that we can't lure in with the flavor they might like. And that also appeals to the younger generation, and to younger people, and to kids. Other tobacco products that, while a lot of their use has gone down, are still important to be mindful of. There's always going to be cigarettes being sold. Cigars or cigarillos, which are then commonly used to also smoke marijuana with. There's still hookah bars down, which people see as safer. And while there may be less content in them, people are typically smoking 100 to 200 hits in a hookah session, as opposed to much less by traditional smoking methods. There can be smokeless dip, but right now the main thing is the bottom right, the ends, the electronic nicotine delivery systems. Some other ones, again, not as common, but may have a different experience here. Dissolvable products, as opposed to they're not required to say that. Then there's what's called the heat not burn products, where there's actual tobacco that's heated, but it's not a liquid. And they do contain very, very high levels of nicotine. So I've said nicotine a lot. It's where we all know, we're all familiar with it. Just to get a little bit of a deeper dive into it, nicotine is a part of a plant. It's poisonous. It's designed to repel insects. But humans have decided that this is something we want to do, is consume this poison for our own benefit. So it's found in tobacco plants. It can also be artificially created, and the artificial creation of ones often leads to higher concentrations, which make them more dangerous. Nicotine salts are made by producing the pure nicotine and then combining with benzoic acids. The point of this is to allow for a smoother experience of smoking it. However, it does then lead to more dangerous effects because of those acids. I'm going to play a second video here.
A lot of teens underestimate the power of nicotine, but it's a highly addictive chemical in cigarettes that can literally change the way your brain works, causing you to crave more and more nicotine. Modern cigarettes are designed to deliver nicotine more quickly to the user, making them even more addictive. And menthol cigarettes may be even harder to quit than other cigarettes. It takes as little as 1 cigarette a month for teens to develop symptoms of addiction. And because of addiction, 3 out of 4 teens who smoke will continue to smoke as adults, even if they want to quit. It's your life. You should be in control, not tobacco.
So while it was a short video, it showed a lot of important stuff in a very quick amount of time. The ability to have a young person addicted so quickly off of so little, and how that can last a lifetime. There's so much research out there that say that while they're two kind of different manifestations of addiction, that the actual addictive process is more severe than an opiate addiction. And the fact that it can happen from 1 cigarette a month and then lead to potential lifelong challenges in that is very disturbing. The companies are only seeking ways to make it more stronger, more available, more effective. They're not trying to make their product less sellable or less effective. They're only trying to make it more. So it's certainly something that right now is very vulnerable to our youth because of that. Nicotine can cause significant withdrawal, especially when someone has become physically or mentally dependent. some symptoms to look out for, especially if you're a parent or if you've got kids in your classroom. You know their kind of baseline health. You know what they're used to. You know how they're usually acting. If you're seeing some of these changes, if all of a sudden they're feeling irritable and cranky, if they're having trouble sleeping, if they're finding headaches, stomach pain, having an increase in appetite, nausea, trouble concentrating, feeling lightheaded, coughing, anxiety, sudden weight gain, or dry mouth. And again, some of these may be the common things of any teenager: trouble sleeping, increase in appetite, having a headache. But to keep these things in context, know kind of what their normal is. If they're kind of being dodgy about something, maybe a thing that they've got, or they're maybe they're keeping something private in their room, and they've also got feeling irritable, they're feeling lightheaded, and they're coughing. Maybe that's time to have that conversation. If you feel like something's not right, and you've noticed that they're complaining of dry mouth and stuff, maybe it's time to have that conversation. So again, pay attention to these changes in their behavior, because it may be a symptom of nicotine withdrawal. You can overdose on nicotine. Yeah. And to look on what this looks like when someone has consumed too much nicotine. It's not a pill, it's not a drink. You're not saying I'm inhaling this specific amount. You're inhaling X amount of times, and you're not exactly sure what that dose is going to be. So someone can overdose, and these are the symptoms. They're very uncomfortable for someone to experience. They may be distressing if someone's never gone through it, or if you're a parent or a teacher seeing it. The immediate effects are nausea, vomiting, lots of stomach challenges, an increase in heart rate and blood pressure, significantly heavier breathing. They may have dizziness, confusion, anxiety, and then more prolonged symptoms in the next up to 4 hours. Their breathing becomes very shallow. The heartbeat starts to get very slow. Extreme fatigue, weakness, diarrhea, inability to control their muscles. So to be mindful if someone is experiencing these, as this may be something where they consume too much nicotine and to seek medical help. In the long term, there's the symptom that they call EVALI, e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury. One of the common things that you'll hear from teens or youth is there's no long-term impact, or it's better for you long-term than smoking. However, there has been significant reports of this vape-related lung injury, damage to the lungs causing hospitalizations and even death. And this was numbers from 3 years ago that 68 people died. I'm sure that number has only gone up. There's an ongoing investigation of what this looks like long-term and short-term and how it can be reduced. So we've seen a surge, a major surge, and I've got numbers that are even more current. This one goes up to 2019. We've got ones from the past year coming up here soon, but this just shows kind of where it started to take off. You see the red line here being for high school students having e-cigarette use in early 2011. Basically, all these numbers were for the red and the green, or the e-cigarette use, were basically nothing. And then the purple and the blue were cigarette use amongst high school and middle school students. And as those cigarette ones went down, they were quickly not just evened out by the vape use, but dramatically surpassed. Within 2019, 27.5 high school students reporting e-cigarette use, with current being in the past 30 days. So there's a 2020 National Youth Tobacco Survey, this was the year during the pandemic, so there was actually a decrease. But that was for, I'm sure a lot of y'all can understand the reasons. A lot of them were at school, a lot of them were around their peers, a lot of them were around their parents, a lot of them didn't have access to it. So there was a decrease there. However, there were still disturbingly high rates of nicotine dependence amongst those who were using. We were seeing that addiction develop. We were seeing the people who kind of the laws had sunk in the previous years fall further deep into that.
Good evening, just 15 minutes. Again, the activity lessons, if you leave it in 15 minutes.
Activity lessons will be leaving in 15 minutes? Yes, with 2 and 5 using them frequently, with 1 and 4 using them daily. We saw a big rise in the flavored cigarettes as now, and this year 85% were using the e-cigarette use. So looking at 2022, our latest data, more than 1 in 4 are using those e-cigarettes daily. So that decrease we saw during the pandemic years came back up. They're using the disposables, and 85% are using the flavored ones. About 14% in high school students and 3% of middle school students are reporting the e-cigarette use currently. And more than a quarter of them were using it every single day of the ones that were. So there's a survey that asked why our youth are using this, or how they're accessing it as well. Nearly 40% say that they were exposed to it by their friends or family members. About 1 in every 3, 31% were saying that it was the flavors that brought it to them. And then 17% were expressing the belief that they thought they were less harmful than other forms of tobacco, such as cigarettes. They were also asked about kind of their knowledge of their beliefs. They're unaware that many of these products can be nicotine, and 60% of teens incorrectly reported that they do just for mostly flavoring. That's not the case. The overwhelming majority contain nicotine. 66% said they thought it was just flavoring. 14% didn't even know what was in their product. They were just smoking without any idea of what was going on in it. So, again, some reasons that we're concerned. Youth who start using e-cigarettes are 4 times more likely to start using more traditional, they call combustible or conventional cigarettes, than a non-e-cigarette user. Again, we saw that massive decrease of cigarette use, and this can lead to that long-term addiction of those. This is a slide on COVID-19. I would apply this to any respiratory illness, flu, pneumonia, the challenges it causes there. But young people who have used e-cigarettes are 5 times more likely to get a COVID-19 diagnosis. Young people who ever used them or conventional cigarettes at 7 times more likely, whether that was a combination of being around exhaled air with their friends or having compromised respiratory systems because of that. It did make it weaker and more vulnerable to these illnesses. There has been some legislation in the past few years that is showing some promise that the government is taking seriously. In 2019, a bill was put in place that every school board development and policy to prohibit the use and distribution of these products. Also that year, there's a minimum age was raised to 21 as opposed to 18, which it had been for a very long time. Also in that year, they required educational materials, prevention materials to be provided regarding the use of these e-cigarettes. Restrictions were also made to limit it in restaurants, workplaces, bars, and also to make it so that smoking in a vehicle with a minor present was not allowed. There's been flavor bans. This is the video we watched on the Juul. That was kind of their big thing, was we have all these flavors, and certain of these, of the closed e-cigarette cartridges, not the big pods, but the specific e-cigarette cartridges can't be flavored anymore. There's also been reduced or a ban on the menthol cigarettes. And so these ones that are giving it more access, more ease of smoking it, are being addressed. So hopefully that people will not either turn to them or stay on them. Again, FDA taking things seriously, but also experiencing delays and showing that we need to act quickly. We do have some resources here. And again, these will be in our toolkit, but also if you're watching home recording, feel free to put these down. There's Quit Now Virginia. It's got a hotline, a web chat, a text service that can be simply done from a smartphone. There's expert counselors, there's coaches who can help you develop plans. This can be something if you're a parent that you can work through with your teen or your youth, or a teen can work with on their own. There's also the 1-800-QUIT-NOW line for anyone needing help with this. And then also teen.smokefree.gov, a government-run operation where there's texting, there's an app, there's live chats, again, plans. They've got an Instagram, they've got tools and tips to help people quit. In Virginia, we've got the Live Free Vape, a text line, 873-737. There's the Department of Health for Parents, which can give conversation starters, resources to help with their teens. Virginia, it really does have a lot of good information here. And again, this will all be in our toolkit. There's the Truth Initiative. There's the many commercials on this. They've got the another text line, 88709. There's a lot, again, I'm sounding out a lot of numbers here that I know people aren't going to remember by heart. They'll all be in our toolkit. But this just shows the amount of resources that are available. If someone isn't liking one or finding one not effective, there are lots of others that they can turn to until they find the right one. There's a program called Teen Intervene, which is a screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment program for teens and identified as showing signs of problems with alcohol, tobacco, or drugs. Someone can be referred to this in the school. If someone has noticed that there's been challenges there, they're possibly causing something, let's bring a trained professional to the academy, who would come in, work on a goal setting. Again, it's not a judgment-based thing or an accusatory-based thing. It's more of a kind of a conversation with the youth of, how are things going. If you want to talk about the situation, why you turn to it, what can we do to help? What are some goals you can make? So it's not us simply just telling them what to do. They're talking themselves through. There's a lot of motivational interviewing. They're talking about the pros and cons. They're talking about what realistic and reasonable goals they're choosing, and how they can make that work and checking in with that. And Region 10 offers that if that's something a school or someone's interested in. We've got the email here for them. Just some cost. Students in Charlottesville and Albemarle County Public Schools, I know that it's branching out to other areas as well. So, if you're a parent and you're asking, what can I do? I feel powerless here. A good place to start is being willing to have that conversation, as hard as it is. I know that conversation is uncomfortable. That conversation can be difficult, but it is less hard than dealing with some of the effects that can come later. Whether that is from continued issues at school, perhaps developing a more serious nicotine problem, or one of the main things is that it primes the brain for addiction with other substances, and being able to address that before it happens. So starting this conversation early when they're young and continuing to talk about them. When opportunities arise, whether it's an article or a presentation here, like tonight, when that happens, seen on TV, opportunities, having that conversation, planting those seeds. I want to avoid scare tactics and offer the accurate science-based information. Again, kids and youth, especially with access to the internet and information, are oftentimes far more ahead of the game than the government. So bringing that accurate information and having that credibility is very important to them. Knowing the products, what they look like, and what they can be. Again, these are designed to be discreet. My best advice would be, if you think or you feel like something's off with an item or a product that is in your house or in your classroom, or that your youth has, something probably is up to listen to those instincts. Get familiar with what the more traditional ones look like, but also be on the lookout for what other unconventional ones may look like. To set clear expectations and to express your disapproval, to not normalize tobacco or nicotine use when you see it, whether it's from someone else or some other environment. To be mindful of their whereabouts, their activities, be mindful of their friends, what they like to get into, and focus on encouraging and supporting healthy behaviors. One of the more revealing things about some of the conversations I've had with kids, with youth, is why they turn to it. Feeling alone or feeling upset or feeling anxious. What's leading to that? Why are kids at 11, 12, 13 turning to substances so early? And what can be done about that? So supporting those healthy behaviors and trying to avoid that non-judgmental aspect of it. So we've got a toolkit that I've mentioned a lot of times here. It's got different lesson plans, different resources, parents, students, infographics, flyers. We've got a QR code if people have access to this PowerPoint. The links up there, but the QR code is probably the quickest way to reach it. Our youth tobacco and nicotine use toolkit, it has a lot of good stuff. I will leave this up for a second if anyone wants to scan through it really quick. Also, it's got some links to some additional online tools, and there's also other toolkits inside. But it is mainly geared to parents, students, also schools, of what they can do, people that are around youth in very, very common environments. Flyers can be downloaded, they can be printed, they can be shared. They're in multiple languages. There's media campaigns, and people are interested in kind of showing those. And if you're seeing this and you want to see how this presentation or possibly others are brought to you, there are different ways to do this. Our request form is available on our, I would search, it's changed the name of it now, so basically the Virginia Health Department. I would look for that. And we also have it at Region 10 Prevention at region10.org. We can bring this presentation information as well. So that is it. I'm going to open it up to questions from the people here or the audience that is streaming. Thank you all for your time for listening to this important issue.
Can I ask a question? Because you mentioned it several times that nicotine is in each of these. So kind of extending out, thinking about the vapes with THC or other products in it, there's still a component of nicotine, correct?
Typically,
There's
yes.
always going to be a component of addiction.
Yes.
As opposed to maybe kind of the long-held viewpoints of marijuana or THC is not addictive, the feeling thereafter, where you're mixing these products with other substances that have been proven to be highly addictive. Is that correct?
And one of the things, because and I'll be completely transparent for you all and for the presentation, I'm recovering substance user, an addict. And one of the things that stands out about when I'm reading this presentation and when I'm going through this information, doing the data, is the human brain isn't fully developed until 25. And addiction is simply, in its most core term, is the inability for your brain to regulate it. And sure, a 16-year-old may be able to handle THC. They may not turn out to end up being an addict. And their brain may not be primed for that, but it might be. And they aren't going to really know until they're 25 or 26. And messing around with that is incredibly dangerous. Sure, this might be something your brain can handle, but it might not be. And that's something that they find out, when they're 26 and 27, and perhaps they've been prescribed medications like a Xanax or an amphetamine for ADD or an opiate for an injury. And that brain has been primed for that addiction by the nicotine or the exposure to THC. That can be some very dangerous stuff. And so, yes, especially having that brain not fully developed for, in high school, another decade, that's incredibly dangerous. The other questions, and I'll be transparent. I was that 14-year-old hiding things from my parents, hiding things from my teachers. Is there any questions you'd like to ask a future, I guess, in that regard of, what to look for, if you could see one of your students who is struggling with that, 20 years from now, and me, what questions would you have for them?
So you work with teens now, correct? So as you work with these teens, where are they kind of revealing their hiding spots? We have the cars, but I think the one thing that really took me is two of those products. If you just had it sitting across the room, that looks like an earbud case. If you didn't know what you were looking for, or at holiday time or birthday time, you just bought your child a pair of earbuds, like you might not be thinking, oh, that's what that is. But also, highly motivated teens kind of figure out ways to hide things. So as you've been working with some of these teens, to assist parents, teachers, administrators that invest a great deal of time in trying to look into these situations, where should they be looking? They look like technology, so they should be checking book bags or underneath a mattress or in a jacket hood where the lining's been cut a little bit, because that's an easy way to load vapors into. I think just kind of providing some helpful tips for parents.
Of course, and I would say this: they are very, very good at hiding these things. All of the products that it's immediately used up. What they are less good at is hiding the kind of extra stuff, the seats, the boxes, the wrappers, things can come, all that kind of accessory stuff. That stuff that's living on kind of the periphery of it. They're not as good as that. While they may be guarding the jewel pod very well and keeping that. The stuff that comes with it that might just be in your trash, that might be discarded somewhere like casually in the room. That's a different story. Be mindful of kind of things that are coming with it. That is much less guarded and that seems to be the places that are most exposed. In terms of, again, the products themselves, nowadays they're kind of designed to be less hidden in that regard. So again, it goes back to something seeping out of place. Someone is, like you said, they look like earpods, or AirPods. If they're carrying this around and they're never listening to music, what's going on there? If something is seeming off with the thing, it seems on the surface harmless or normal, but it's not being used in a normal way. Or it's a little out of place. Or not instinctively on your brain's picking up on that pattern that something's not right here, and to check on that. Does that make sense?
In your experience, what message resonates best with kids when you have this conversation, whether to say don't start, or if they've even started, in your experience, what are the kids here that makes them go, oh man, this, I need to rethink what I'm doing?
So one of the most effective ways that I have worked with this is having them explain it themselves. Because it's hard for them to kind of understand those fully, truly long-term consequences. When it's like, hey, you may develop, illnesses, cancers 30, 40, 50 years from now, and they're 13. They haven't even been at that point. So it's kind of hard for their brain to even literally physically comprehend that. So I've found really the best way is one, asking, what's going on here? Why have you turned to this? Addressing that kind of problem. But then also having them talk about why it might be a challenge for them. Like to play sports. How does this affect your sports? Walk through that. You really take your grades seriously. Did this impact that in any way? Tell me. And a lot of times when they're the ones that's then making that argument, it resonates more than simply just, you're going to fail. You're going to get kicked off the team. You're going to be out of shape. You're going to develop this lung disease. Is eating healthier, working out? How could this help? How is this helping your plans? Help walk me through that. I found that having them make the argument for themselves, because they're smart and curious and have good brains and are good at communicating that and reflecting in those values back to them, because that's when you find out what their values are. So if they're continuing that behavior, reflecting that value back, you said this was important to you, but now this is continuing to happen. What's up there?
What other resources you have, upcoming resources? So I know you shared the toolkit, but does Region 10 have any other events planned in the future?
We do. So we have a 3-part substance abuse series coming up where we're going to have similar presentations on THC and marijuana products, alcohol, and also then this same presentation coming up. It'll be March 22nd, April 17th, and then a date in May. We've got them on our website at region10.org. So I understand off the cuff. But yes, there'll be one in May, or one in March, one in April, one in May. They're all on Wednesdays. In the evenings, they'll be digital, and we'll be speaking on all those. So again, region10.org. We'll have those trainings. They'll be kind of the same format, 45 minutes to hour presentation, and then a conversation, question, answer afterwards. Well, that is all. I appreciate y'all for being here. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you all.